I am so happy to come here and give you the talk about cross-cultural design. Right now it's 8 o'clock in San Francisco. So let's get started. Oh my God. Just joking. uh, well, to arrow is human, right? Everybody recognize this screen. Every single time when your PC had any problem, you'll see the blue screen of death, and nobody is happy when things happen like that. And life is kind of like that. There's a lot of different scenarios thrown to you, and sometimes there's unexpected situation happen. But a lot of times when we look at the situation that is seemingly unpredictable, but I do believe that with creativity, we can make something seemingly as a crisis into an opportunity. So as you probably know, some of you have used Twitter early in the days. There's also another arrow page that was the Twitter whale. Every single time when Twitter goes down, people actually see this arrow image. And I actually am the artist behind the illustration. And the original name of the illustration is actually called Lifting a Dreamer. I created back in 2006 or 7 when I was living in Sydney, Australia, New South Wales, pun intended. But what's really interesting is this illustration became a global phenomenon. It inspired users from around the world, from Japan to Australia, in sculptures, Tokyo, and oil painting. And in New York, you also see this as a street art. And also this is a real spaceship designer, Lego spaceship designer in Copenhagen, Denmark, made it into a Lego whale. Singapore government was even licensing this for the public transit ads. And there's also cakes around the world that is also all done by the users that is inspired by a arrow page. People in the East Coast was even celebrating failure by having a party called the Fail Whale Pale Ale Beer Label Contest Party. And on the right, it's the first time I'm actually came to New York from Sydney to receive an awards. And at the time, they're actually celebrating failure by introducing a farewell martini, which is really wonderful. There's also...
Yeah, it's perfect now. We see the whole whale.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, well, to arrow is human. There you go. I couldn't see when I'm doing full screen. It actually didn't show the color panel. That was kind of funny. Well, that's the spectrum of life. So we were on the cake, right? And then we were talking about the drinks. Hello? Can you see the drinks now? Yeah?
It's perfect.
Okay. Yay, awesome. Thank you for the feedback. And then we have fashion trends around the world. And there's also people celebrating failure by making it into hats. You know, they're wearing the hats. And somebody tattooed it on the leg and it made it to CNN, which is kind of amazing to see an illustration through a technology channel. It can make such a big social impact. Also, the talk show host in America, Conan O'Brien, even commissioned me to do a piece of artwork to celebrate his new show on TBS. And I get the chance to actually meet him and also meet a lot of people right now in San Francisco who I've never met before. And I met all these people in real life as friends. This is on the personal level, but on the professional level, what I was more excited to see is through the whale movement, more and more tech companies around the world started to implement art into the technology product. So as you can see, from Yelp to LinkedIn, from GitHub to Airbnb, and also a lot of sites around the world started to introducing art pieces into their technology products to humanize the interface and also to engage with their user better. Because at the end of the day, the people who develop the technology are human and the users are human too. So hi, my name is Yiying Lu, and Yi means happy, Yi means creative, and Lu means land. I'm sure like a lot of you all speak Chinese, so I don't have to over-explain that, but I was born in Shanghai, China, and I later on was educated in Sydney, Australia, and London, UK. I moved to San Francisco 5 years ago, and I've been working with some of the biggest corporations in the world, my passion is bringing more art into technology company, but also bringing more fun into corporations. I also have worked with advertising agencies from around the world, from Jayward to Thompson, Ericsson to Saatchi and Saatchi. I also have been spoken at a lot of different conferences about innovation and cross-cultural design, including TEDx, Adobe Max, and South by Southwest, and a lot of really wonderful universities around the world as well. My passion here is actually give you this piece of inspiration, which is if you look at the word function, we all know that we have to go to work because we have to serve for a function, but not a lot of people actually really paying attention for the word function, that actually the first three letters F-U-N, fun, right? And the word function actually already has fun that exists in the word structure itself. And what is fun? Fun is the enjoyment, the amusement, or the lighthearted pleasure that supposed to be part of our life. We're living in a life, we're working day in and day out, we're serving for our family, we're serving for the society. But I think, I'm here to remind everyone to, remind yourself to remember to also be alive with pleasure, to be lighthearted, even though sometimes things are tough, sometimes things are challenging. Looking at things from the silver lining, you might be able to find that enjoyment of life. So the first bridge I'd like to introduce here for the cross-cultural innovation is marriage the fun and function. Because if you look at the traditional arrow page, serves a very, very important function, which is telling the user something is wrong. Please bear with us, we're working on it. But same function can be also communicated through a visual mean. So in this case, this arrow page is also serving the same function, which is telling people something is wrong. We are working on it. Please bear with us. But the way that the image was conveyed, the message is different. Instead of using words, here it was using a more super language, which is the visual language. And visual language a lot of times transcends the linguistic barrier. And this is probably the reason why that you've seen users from around the world actually had a pretty positive response, even though it is a arrow page. However, it transcends the function of the arrow page itself. It also delights the user, engages the user, and creates a culture that all the people feel resonate with. So the takeaway is a creative brand or any creative work really combines the functionality and fun. And this is also how you can let your product or your service or anything that you do stand out of the crowd. The second bridge I'd like to introduce to you is the bridge between the East and West. And I think Hong Kong is a very good example to show the marriage of East and West. So I'd like to show you this project that I did with Disney Shanghai back in 2015 when 2016 Disney Shanghai opened to the public. But when it's in 2014 and 15, they're still building it. And one of the most important thing is to recruit some of the really great people to work in the resort. So you can have the most amazing hardware, but really what makes the place, the organization amazing is the people. So they are trying to do a recruitment campaign where they engaged with me and said, we already have decided which characters what we are going to be making into the campaign. Mickey stands for magic, Simba stands for growth, Mulan stands for courage, Elsa stands for dream, Snow White and Seven Dwarfs stands for teamwork and female leadership. And to make all the cohesiveness of these 5 characters, the tagline was, it needs to be authentically Disney and distinctly Chinese. But if you look at these 5 characters, it's actually quite a challenging project because they're not only not the same gender, they're not even the same species, right? So how can we make this look still very much authentically Disney, but also it needed to also have a distinctly Chinese feature there. So I was looking into the traditional means of communication in China and Asia, and I landed onto the technique of paper cut. I think, and I believe that paper cut is a beautiful visual style that all Chinese people feel resonate to. It's very simple, and it's also very visually appealing. So when I was working on Mickey, we have very limited space of making innovation. Here, because it's a very corporate icon and everybody knows Mickey, we can't go too crazy of decorating Mickey. But what we can do, according to the team, is maybe do some small changes or decorations on the shoes, on the wrist, and also on the clothing. And other parts we can't really change it. So how can we introduce paper cut style into it? And it's also integrated well, but also representing the Chinese element. The first thing I thought was the lucky clouds, the Xiangyun from the Beijing Olympic Games. And it's beautiful, and it's also very ancient. So I integrated into the clothing and also on the wrist. And secondly, we have the shoes. The baby shoes, I remember I was doing a lot of research, and as we all know these days we're living in a pretty modern world. In the olden days, especially in northern China, we have these beautiful little baby shoes that is tiger. It's all kinds of different animals, and these animal spirit was said to protect the babies. And this is the reason why when baby was born, they're wearing these little tiger shoe. We call them the 小虎鞋, and the tiger is supposed to protect the newborn baby. I thought that was such a beautiful, tradition that needs to be carried out, because if we don't advocate for these beautiful traditions, the next generation and the generation after will forget about this. So I proposed this idea to the team in Shanghai and also the team in Florida, which is the headquarters of Disney. And both the American team and the Chinese team were very happy about the proposal. And so I feel very grateful that we're all on the same page, and they're very supporting to also advocating for the Chinese culture. So in the end, we were able to integrate the tiger shoe onto the Mickey Mouse, and this is the Mickey. Simba is also another challenging one, because when I was working on Simba, my first draft looked like this, and people look at it and said, "Oh, this is great." But we think that the Simba should look a little bit happier. Right now, he looks a little bit sad. How can you make it look more optimistic? And maybe you can make him smile. Maybe you can make the tail goes up. But most importantly, because the tagline in Chinese is in Chinese Mandarin is 在传奇的故事里，小不点也可以成为大英雄, which in English is in the legendary story, the little ones will become the big hero. And so we really would love to have the little Simba and the adult Simba on the same page, in the same image frame. And I look at it, I was like, but if you put the big Simba and little Simba together, the adult Simba becomes Mufasa. It becomes the dad, right? People will get confused. And they said, well, we think and we believe you will find a way to make it work. And I was like, oh my God, how can we do that? I don't know how I'm going to solve that conundrum. It looks like Mission Impossible. So I went back and I watched the animation a few times, and I actually find a little solution by watching the animation. Simba. So inside the animation, there was this scene that there's a little tiny Simba as a totem tattoo on the tree. So I thought it would be a great idea to actually tattoo the little Simba onto the adult Simba. So this is how I basically solved the problem. And the team also said it will be wonderful to also introducing some more color palette from Africa because the storyline happens in Africa. So I also introduced the African totem to the illustration, and they also said it would be great to have the lion looking back. So this is the final solution of Simba. So that's how I was working with the seemingly mission impossible of Simba. Mulan was another really interesting challenge because when I first submit the Mulan illustration, it looks very flowy, and I sent it to the team, and they said, "Oh, we like it, but we would love to see there's this." It's very soft. We wanted to see something like more of a combination of masculine and feminine. Like this is kind of right now it's too feminine, and we also know that this is a very traditional Chinese character. Sorry, is it okay? I thought somebody have a question. Oh, good. Should I keep presenting? Okay. So when I was submitting this one, they also said it'd be great to introducing some Western element into this very Asian character. So I was like, what kind of Western element we can introduce to that? They said, well, we want something as a combination of male energy and female energy. So I did more research and I found out that there's actually a good way, which is the "We Can Do It" poster in the Second World War. And I thought it would be an interesting idea to have Mulan using that pose, which has a little bit Western influence, but also that pose itself actually changed the entire energy of the illustration style, right? And then I was looking at the decoration of the horse and also the cloth and the background, where I have to make a choice of what do I include to make this image more like richer and fuller. But I didn't want it to just like draw anything. I want to draw something that actually has the meaning and carries the weight of Mulan. And as you probably all know, because most of you speak Chinese, so you would know that the name Mulan in Chinese actually means magnolia flower. But a lot of non-Chinese speaker had no idea what Mulan means. So I really want to kind of introducing this part of the Chinese meaning of the flower to a larger audience, not only to the Chinese audience, but also to the audience that speaks English and other languages. So I choose the magnolia flower as the foreground and also the background that integrates the meaning of Mulan's name into the decoration. So it's not just only beautiful to look at, it actually has a deeper meaning that associate with the character and also associate with the symbolism of the flower, which is tenacity and courage. Elsa is another really hard, it's a pretty interesting challenge, because if you look at Elsa, the character itself, there's nothing Chinese, right? So how can we make Elsa still has the integrity of the original character, but also adding a little bit more of the Chinese flair? So firstly, we have to choose a character that also represents the Kung Fu in China. I think this is the closest I can find. And the team also think it was a power pose. It's very appropriate. And secondly, I started to kind of relook at the hair and the clothing, and again applying the paper cut style onto the hair and the clothing, and all of a sudden it has elevates the character and make it more sort of just distinctly Chinese, right? And so then I was having the uh, snowflakes in the background and foreground, and this is Elsa. Snow White was also another interesting challenge, because when I was creating the illustration, people said, oh, we wanted to have not only the CEO, but also the entire team. We want the seven dwarfs to also be in the image. So when I created the initial artwork, I was having, a very rough sketch, and they said, oh, we don't want any hierarchies. We want to make sure that the characters are surrounding by her. So I redesigned the characters and surrounded her with the seven dwarfs and integrating the forests. And this is how Snow White came about. And this is also really interesting to see finally how it works in reality at the subway, at the actual interview space, outdoor ads and indoor ads on the collaterals, paper material on the apps. And they were successfully recruited 70,000 people out 100,000 applicants. So this is the story of Disney Shanghai, and this is also how I managed to work on the bridging the gap between the East and West. And I do believe that the takeaway here for everyone is, if we're working on any project, it is important to respect the local customs of the local people and the local market. In this case, it is a example that American company or global company entering China, and it's important to infuse the customs and also respect the customs and histories and cultures, and integrate it into the campaign or the work you do. This is not only applying for American or global company entering in China, but also if it is a Hong Kong company going to Australia, or a Hong Kong company that is going to US or European country. It's the same principle that you can also apply for whatever you do. This is also one of my favorite projects. The logo, this is the original logo of the company. I didn't design that logo. So this is a really, really interesting cross-cultural design and branding identity project I did. It's called the Home 789. And it was a real estate company that based in Sydney, Australia. And the CEO is Australian Chinese. He was born in China and then educated and relocated to Australia. So when he started his company, he was using 789, which is phonetically, according to Chinese, qi means rise, which is 升起, ba means development, which is 发展, 九 means, or 9 means 持久, which is sustainability. But he was happy with the 789, but he really would love to have the Chinese character integrated into the logo itself. So he came to me and asked me to basically work on this challenge, which is, he said, hey, Yiying, I really love the Chinese character. Is it possible for you to integrate the Chinese character Jia, home, into the logo itself, right? But if you look at the Chinese character and the English character, home and Jia, they don't have anything in common, right? So how can I do some innovation around that character to integrate with the 789? And if you look at the character home historically, it's pretty interesting. If you started to look at the evolution of the character, the second one especially, you can see it is very pictorial. There's a little pig underneath the roof. Apparently, according to our ancestor, home is not, before, home is not necessarily the place that you live. Home is actually a place that you offer food to your ancestor. And so here, this is the roof, and then underneath the roof, it's the pig. And in Chinese character, the thing behind it is called zhi, and that means pig. And it's actually the food that we kind of offer this as a gift to our ancestor, right? So I thought it would be interesting to actually take the pig and then marry that or reinterpret that with the 789. So I figure out a way to intertwine the characters of 789, or interlock the character of 789. And that's how I created the very first version. And I was very happy about it. I thought that was genius. And I was like, this is so good. I think the CEO is going to be very happy about it. So I sent it over to the CEO, and sure enough, he replied me right away. He's like, I really like it, and I think this is a great job you've done. But I do want it to also ask my advisor to get some advice. Maybe we can improve the character. Would you willing to have a chat with my advisor? And I was very, I was very curious. I said, okay, because by that time I'm already pretty established. I had got a lot of awards in you know, in the world, and I was like, what kind of advisor do you have? Is that advisor also a designer, or what kind of background is your advisor? And he said, well, my advisor is a feng shui master. And I was kind of shocked. I was like, what? You have a feng shui master giving me design tips? You have a feng shui master who's gonna give me branding advice? But part of me was also thinking, well, if the feng shui master has been around for more than 20 years, there must be something useful he's going, or I might be able to learn something from the feng shui master. Part of me was like, you know, I'm not sure how this is going to work out, but let's just give it a go and see what you can learn from this experience. I think especially for people who are very established in their fields, if they're already an expert, often we're not necessarily like other people question our expertise, right? And this is kind of how you can really talk with your ego. A lot of times you have to have that conversation with your ego and say, okay, well, I understand you feel a little bit hurt, but how about let's look at the situation. Maybe this is an opportunity for you to learn. And so I basically convinced myself, let me do a phone call with the feng shui master, and I think I can learn something from him. And sure enough, I did a phone call with him. I was in Sydney, he was in China, and we did a phone call, and he actually gave me some really amazing advice. So during the call, he said, well, I really like your design, but in feng shui, we don't really like sharp corners. And probably some of you also know, like in China, we don't like, you know, sharp corners. We like something rounded. We like something that is, you know, more organic. And so he said, how about let's get rid of the corners, and then let's make it more rounded. And secondly, I look at your, you know, 一撇一捺, these two strokes on the side. It's not integrated with any of the 7, 8, 9. And is there a way you can potentially integrate these two strokes into maybe the 8? I think that potentially you can make it look like a ribbon. And I was like, that's a crazy idea. What are you talking about? Make these two strokes look like a ribbon? But then part of me was like, maybe we can give it a try. It doesn't hurt, right? So I went back and I give it a try, and I made it into a ribbon, as he said. I was like, wow, that actually worked. This is kind of cool. So I made it as I made the two strokes as a ribbon, and I integrated with the 8. Somehow it actually worked. And I also made the corner of the 7 more rounded. And I was happy with the bottom part, and he was also very happy with the bottom part. And he's like, this is great, but I still think you can do something with the top rooftop, right? He said, you know, is there a way you can make the rooftop more organic? And I was looking at, historically, the rooftop has been always very much diagonal. There is no sort of rounded version of the rooftop. So how can I do something to make this rounded and also make it more integrated with the bottom parts? That seems like a dead end. It seems like I can't do anything about it. But I keep pushing this forward. I said to myself, maybe there's a way. So I started to look at the rooftop radical. And as you can see, there's all kinds of radicals in Chinese. And this one in particular, we know that in Mandarin, this is called bao gai tou. I have to ask you guys, how do you say this in Cantonese? So in Mandarin, we call this bao gai tou. And I love the English translation directly from Google. It's called treasure hijab. And I just thought it was really funny. I was like, treasure hijab, what kind of treasure is that, right? Well, like the bao gai tou, what bao is this bao, right? So I started to realize that, you know, maybe I can find a way to figure out what treasure is this. Oh, the treasure is actually yuanbao, right? It's the bao gai tou, like the treasure literally is coming from yuanbao. And yuanbao is this Asian currency that used in China throughout the Asian times. We all know what yuanbao looks like. And yuanbao is not diagonal. Yuanbao is actually quite a rounded shape. And so I re-illustrate the bao gai tou according to the root of where it's coming from, which is yuanbao. And that's how I solved the problem. All of a sudden, you had a baogaito that is rounded and also rooted from the original name. So this is how the Jia looks like in the end, that integrated with the logo, and also how this looks like on the actual listing. And lucky enough, this character also has been awarded uh, branding excellence 3 years in a row. I think they just got a new award last year as well. I haven't updated that one. So this is one of my favorite subject, which is really kind of how we can marry the East and West, and also through design research, we can truly come up with something innovative. This is also another really interesting example I'd like to introduce, which is the China-Australia Millennial Program, which is CAMP. It is the world's first bilingual bicultural incubator for young Chinese entrepreneurs and also young Australian entrepreneurs. It is a 3-month incubation program which bring 100 young Chinese people and also 100 from Australia, and they will be put into 15 different thinking tanks. And they also will be coming to Sydney for 5 days face-to-face summit. And they will climb the famous Sydney Harbour Bridge together, and also working on the business plan and present the business plan during the gala dinner, where they will select the winners, and they will get, you know, a lot of media exposure, and also turn their entrepreneurial idea into reality. So this is a fantastic event, but in the beginning of this, they need a logo, they need a branding, and they don't have anything yet. So the CEO came to me and said, look, we really would love to have your help to help us to make this into a reality. And we have to basically tackle all these different aspects of the branding. Firstly, we have to make sure it meets the duality. It's a bicultural incubator, and it needs to meet the Australian and Chinese two countries and two cultures. And then it also needed to showcase the growth and showcasing the multidisciplinary, which is 15 thinking tanks, has health, technology, food, energy, and all these different aspects. So how can we find a way to basically meet all the criterias and have a singular logo that can be reflecting duality, growth, and multidisciplinary in the same time? Again, I find the solution from the ancient Chinese game. I'm sure all of you know this game, which we call this the tangram. The tangram in Chinese Mandarin is Qi Chao Ban, and it literally means the 7 board of skills, which is an amazing thing, amazing invention that our ancestor has invented. It is a square that consists of 7 flat shapes, but when you put it together, it can form, you know, hundreds or probably thousands of different combination of shapes. So I took this as an inspiration, and I also reformed all these different aspects or different thinking tanks into a visual representation through usage of tangrams. And it's pretty cool, and it's pretty fun to do that. I also came up with my own caterpillar, cocoon, and butterfly by using the tangrams. I was so in love with the origami class before. I think it would be really fun to also come up with origami for these 3 aspects as well. That would be a lot of fun. So the challenge here is also we gotta find a way to do the logo, right? So I finally used the butterfly as the logo because it's all about transformation, and incubation is also the transformation from the caterpillar to the cocoon to the butterfly. So when I first presented the idea to the CEO, she actually really liked the butterfly symbolism, and we were also decided to basically break it into the green, the red and the blue, which is reflecting from the flag color, and also the East and the West. But then we also thought it'd be a good idea. We did some user testing, and people said that some of them, actually most of them, can see this is a butterfly, but some of them said, oh yeah, once you mentioned this is a butterfly, now I can see it. But it would be helpful if we can have like some sort of antenna that will make it easy for me to know this is a butterfly. But then we look at the shape of the antenna. That's actually also very much the upside down character of the character Ren, the Chinese character Ren, right? And also it's kind of relevant because it is a program that connects people from two different cultures and two different countries. So we decided to use the Chinese character Ren as the antenna, but it also represents the two countries' young people meeting together at the bridge. They're kind of, it's one is in the southern hemisphere and the one is in the northern hemisphere. So it's also symbolic and it's also serving a purpose. So this is the final logo of camp. And this is also how it looks like at the event, at the dinner, all these winners and all these people that participant for the very first inaugural dinner at camp. So that's the websites and brochures and how they look like in the flags in Sydney Town Hall. And also that's the final poster. So this is the China-Australia Millennial Project. Another really one of my favorite projects, which is also marrying the technology and art. I'm sure all of you have already used these emojis on your phone. And I'm very excited to tell you that I am actually the designer behind these emojis that you use, whether it's on Apple and Google or Samsung. So I designed the original Unicode emoji, which basically is the mothership of all, and all these other platforms that use this as an inspiration and based on this. So how did I start and how did I came up with the emoji in the first place? I'm sure a lot of you probably wanted to know the story, and I'm here to share, you know, the background story of this whole thing. So in 2015, and it's a very auspicious day on the 8th of August. I did not plan this, but it was just happened to be one of my friend, Jenny 8 Lee. She was inviting me to have dumplings at her house. Jenny and I, we actually met 10 years ago in New York, and she used to work for New York Times, and she's very, very interested in publishing. And so that sort of also sets up the foundation of the story. So she invited me to go to her house to have dumplings, and I realized there is no dumpling emoji. I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe there is no dumpling emoji. And then she's like, good point. And I said, okay, well, this conversation doesn't go anywhere. But I went back and I thought, wait a minute, I'm a designer. I have imagination and I might be able to make it happen. So I went back to my table and I started to work on my very first dumpling emoji. I called it the bling bling dumpling because it blings. And I sent it back to her and she really liked it. And then the next thing we know is we went to the dumpling party. We had a lot of dumplings and we met people from around the world. And we realized that dumplings are actually very universal. It's not just the Asian food or Chinese food. It's actually a universal food. Georgia have kinkali, Japan has gyoza, Korea have mandu, Italy have ravioli, pierogi, pelmeni, empanadas, crêpe, Chinese pot stickers, momos, mentis in Turkey, mutajan from Germany. I mean, it's international. So we formed this thing called the Emoji Nation, which is a campaign. We throw a campaign on Kickstarter, and we basically were advocating the world deserves a dumpling emoji, and we need a dumpling emoji that is loved by billions of people. And so the actual emoji publisher, which is the Unicode, basically reached out to us, and Jenny also did a lot of research with Unicode, and Unicode reached out to me and said, hey, we really like your idea of your bling bling dumpling, but if you look at most of the emojis on the keyboard, there is no face on the food. And I'm like, not really. If you look at the the French fry, it actually has a face, but it's very small. So they're like, never mind, it will be great if you can take out the face. So I took out the facial expression, which I really like the facial expression, but they asked me to take it out, so I have to take it out. And then they said, oh, most of the food are actually 45 degrees. Can you please make the dumpling 45 degrees? And I was like, why is the food need to be 45 degree? I think maybe they taste better. So I made the food into 45 degrees, and they're very happy. And I submitted, and they said, oh, meantime, we already have a lot of people also have requests. We want to have takeout boxes, chopsticks, and fortune cookie. There are people already written the written proposal, and we need the artwork behind it. I'm telling you guys, this is not my job. It is not my career, but it is my calling. So I kind of just did it to serve the community. And I thought, well, this is kind of my design responsibility. And I designed all these one by one, and I sent it to the UTC meeting, which is the Unicode Technical meeting. Every year, they actually have these UTC meeting at different companies in Silicon Valley. So in early 2016, we had the 146 UTC meeting at IBM, and I presented these designs to the one of the president over there, Peter, and my friend Alalita. At the time, she works at Twitter. She tweeted on Twitter. What's really interesting is the people actually enter the UTC meeting from around the world, just like what we're doing right now. Like you guys are in Hong Kong, I'm in San Francisco. So when they're doing the meeting, a lot of people are actually tuning online from different parts of the world and different time zone of the world. So Bobby, who's actually from Taiwan, he chimed in and he basically tweeted right to Alalita and myself. He's like, the figure crossed chopsticks actually is impolite in China and Japan to the elders in real time. So I got the feedback in real time right after my presentation. And I was like, oh my God, I was born in China and I had no idea of this very important etiquette. And I started to do research, and I realized in Japan, this is still a very kind of important etiquette. And also some parts of China, this is still being regarded as not very respectful. So I think it's similarly to the xiaohuxie, right? Like there's a lot of things that over the time, if we don't practice or if we don't advocate, and we tend to simplify things too. Language is lost in translation, just like the difference between the traditional Chinese and simplified Chinese. Some of the times that we will simplify our language, just like English, we say, magnificent and marvelous. And nowadays we just say awesome, right? So a lot of things can be simplified, but I do think in this case, for this particular etiquette, I do think it is important to acknowledge the etiquette. It needs to be respected and need to be also carried on to the younger generation. So I uncrossed the chopsticks and taken that into consideration. And I tweeted back to Bobby. And after many more iterations, we finally have the final 4 emojis that's available on your phone in 2017. Late 2017. And I also, after that, I also designed a peacock emoji. And this is another really great news. Get ready for this. So 2020, we also have the boba emoji. Yay! So the boba emoji is also going to be available on your phone. I believe it's Q4 of this year. But what's really exciting also is this emoji that I designed for the community also gave me a wonderful opportunity to go to IDEO Shanghai, which is actually in my hometown. So I was invited to come to IDEO from San Francisco in 2017. So IDEO has this amazing program called Global Creative Collaborator, and they've never done it in mainland China before, and they thought it would be a good idea to collaborate with me because I speak Mandarin Chinese, English, and also Shanghainese. So it's really fun to be there and work with people around the world. They have some really amazing folks from different parts of the world. This is actually Franzi who introduced me to Mautajan, which is the German dumpling. And so everybody wants to see more dumplings. I was initially wanting to do the 12 zodiacs of the Chinese zodiacs, but everybody was like, no, we want to see more dumplings. We want you to make more dumpling characters. So I thought, well, that's fair enough. I love food anyway. So one of the colleague who's also Chinese, but she was born in Hawaii, and she was asking me about the the food wonton. And in Shanghai, 小馄饨, which is the small little wonton, the wonton soup is very popular. And so she was asking me, what's the deal with wonton? Why is it called wonton? And I said, I have no idea, even though I was born and raised over there. I've never actually looked into it. So I started to look into the name wonton, and in Chinese, we probably all know the Chinese character wonton in Mandarin is 馄饨, right? And it's actually originated from Mandarin, also Mandarin Chinese 混沌. So there is a relationship between wonton and primordial chaos. Because if you even look at the root word, it's pretty much the same, except the radical is different. One is water and one is food. So apparently, I'm not joking. This. Get ready for this. So wonton, or the soup dumpling, is a metaphor of the primordial chaos, and this is also explains in the further research I've done. So in the Chinese classic Shanghai Jing, which is the classic mountain and sea, it actually has the illustrated version of wonton, which is the primordial chaos, being personified into this character, which has 4 wings, 6 legs, no face, but according to our ancestor, he is, or it is, good at singing and dancing. And so this was a personified version of how primordial chaos would look like. And I thought that was really romantic, because if you think about it, it's kind of true. The reason why all kinds of places have different dumplings, different countries have different dumplings, is literally a way to celebrate how human break the chaos and create the universe, right? So the universe was being created from this pocket of unknown. You don't know what's inside until you take a bite. And so I thought it would be fun for me to also create my own little primordial chaos. I wanted to make it more fun, and adding the faces. And I showed this to the team of IDEO. I came up with different characters of the primordial chaos, and they really like it. And I also invite them to create their own primordial chaos, doing different activities. And it was really amazing to see people from the entire company, from the VP to like the head of Asia Pacific, to an IT person or a legal person, a translator, or a business person. Everybody get the chance to draw and come up with their own interpretation of the primordial chaos, which is really awesome. I would love to see what you guys will come up with. This is what the IDEO team came up with. It's so cool to see the primordial chaos is doing all kinds of different activities. They're doing selfie, watching the stock market. It's just ridiculous. So I choose some of our favorite, and then I turn them into WeChat stickers. And animate them, and people can use them right away on the phone. I also created international versions to celebrate the diversity of the IDEO Shanghai team, because they have people from Mexico City and Germany and New York. And so I thought it'd be really fun to kind of illustrate them into different nationalities as well. And they can also use it right away on their WeChat. We also print it out as online and offline artworks people can carry, so that when I'm back in San Francisco, they still have a little memorabilia there. So this is IDEO Shanghai, and also the little primordial chaos, the little tiny chaos. And it's really amazing, because this whole thing started with the dumpling emoji. I just thought I should make a dumpling emoji, and then the rest became the history. So one thing I think I would like to also introduce to you is the bridge between the tech and art. And I also do believe that technology are made by human, and we need to make technology more accessible and more interesting and engaging for human users, right? This is also one of my favorite projects that I did many years ago, probably already 9 years ago, where I made the QR code as a fashion icon. So as you all know, like, QR code is not very sexy. It's not necessarily the most beautiful thing to look at. And a lot of people don't really like QR code because, let's face it, it's pretty boring to look at. So I was always interested in seeing if there's a way that we can make QR code interesting and beautiful. because I think the technology itself is very functional, but it's not necessarily very fun. So when I get the chance to contribute to a fashion magazine called Meets Obsession, when they have the very first inaugural publishing, the publisher actually editor came to me and said, hey, we wanted to illustrate the most intriguing 10 icons in fashion. Do you think you can make something interesting? We also would like to drive more traffic to our website and also to our magazine. Is there a way you can integrate maybe the website information into the art itself? And I immediately thought, would it be really great if we can actually have people use the QR code? When they scan the code, they can immediately go to the website. And so that was the motivation in the first place, which is coming from a place of we wanted this to be functional, but also we want this to look really cool. So I came up with the watercolor illustration of integrating the actual QR codes into the actual character itself. So this is Anna Wintour from The Devil Wears Prada. So if you scan the code, it actually recognizes the code, and you can see the phone is pretty old. This is 9 years ago in 2011. This is actually the very first watercolor QR codes. And then also the Olsen twins. So you don't know which twin is which, but if you scan them, you'll know, oh, this is Mary Kate, or this is Ashley. These are also other fashion icons, Anna Delaloso, who's Vogue Japan, and then more people. So I illustrate all these characters, and it was really fun to showcasing different folks. And I also did another one, which is the watercolor, the colorful watercolors, where I did the watercolor illustration. I'm just gonna make sure. So the actual watercolor illustration is also showcasing the video. So when you scan the code, it actually shows you the video of how it's being created. And you can see the whole process of creating. And it was really amazing to also get a lot of technology publication recognize that we can really marry the technology and art together to create incredible experiences for the users. So the technology and art is translate the relatively new and unfamiliar computer language to approachable visual language, which people can understand. Finally, I will introduce you some ideas and examples from my project when I was working as a creative director of 500 Startups, which is a global VC firm that invested about 2,800 companies around the world. So when the company expanded to India, they needed to do logo to fit into the Indian market. So when I was creating this, if you look at the global market, the 500 looks like this. But if you use Hindi, it actually looks like a 400. So obviously I can't use that Hindi because it looks like it's 100 short. So we're not going to use that. And so I have to spell out 500 into Hindi. But then we realized that challenge 2 is there's 122 languages in India, and Hindi is just one of the 20 official languages that's spoken in India. Not everybody actually speak Hindi. So the solution is we spread out all the languages, and then we look at the logo itself, and I was using the language to be the border of the 500. And then integrating with the color of the Indian flag, and that's the solution of the 500 India. Now, there's another one, which is with 500 Korea, which is also another challenging one, because when I was working on that one, they needed to do a female empowerment campaign that had, or 2-day event to empower female entrepreneurs in Korea. And they wanted to have all the sponsors, in this case 500 and Google, because the event is happening at Campus Google. They also want to highlight the amazing female founders from Korea. So they want to have the Korean characters be integrated into the campaign itself. But if you look at the female character in English with the female character in Korea,